All right, the book 2 fights. Let's rank them in a tier list. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Geek Talk. Today we're going to talk about my favorite and not so favorite fight scenes from Book 2, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Book 2, Earth. Now, if you haven't seen my video for Book 1 already, you can see it somewhere here around my face. I'm going to do something a little bit different from what I did before, and that is, I think that the rankings that I had before were good from when I was doing the relationship tier list, which you can also see somewhere around my face, but I don't think it works so well for fight scenes. I can't just put like legendary, good, mad, trash. I think it really should just go back to the classic idea of tier list with the S tier, A, B, C, and D tier, and I think that will make it more balanced and make more sense of where I'm really ranking these so that it's not all lopsided onto one end. But funny enough that I say that, really quick aside, I just got done recording my fight scene analysis for Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and I gotta say, guys, and I've said this before on my reaction series on that TV show, Full Metal Alchemist fight scenes are way better than Avatar: The Last Airbender fight scenes, and seeing it back to back, I'm like, wow, the contrast is pretty huge. But that is a completely different subject. Let's get right into this tier list. And the first one we have here is actually the final fight of the Book 2 series, and that is Aang and Katara versus Zuko and Azula. And this one I'm going to put right up into the S tier. It is definitely the best fight of this set for sure, unless I see something that reminds me of something else and I'm like, wait a minute, that one's actually pretty good too. But as of right now, the best fight. Huge dynamic, huge betrayal from Zuko. Gotta put it there. Next one, we have the chase, which is going to be kind of surprising. I think this one's actually going to be kind of a mid-tier kind of fight scene. And I say that because while it is interesting seeing all three of these people fighting against each other and they're all kind of vying, they have different motivations behind it, I think the animation of the actual fight scene is pretty not great. It's not as fluid as it could have been. I feel like it was very mechanical. So I had my feelings. My first gut reaction is to put this in mid-tier. This might change later, but right now, yes, cool dynamic, cool concept, cool narrative behind it, but the fight scene itself felt very mechanical to me and not as fluid as some of the other fight scenes that we've seen from the series. All right, next up, we've got Aang and Azula on the drill. So it's their first fight that they had on the drill. I'm gonna put this into A tier, mostly on the back of two moves. One, Azula's move when she was like pinwheeling over Aang's earth attack and then she shoots out her feet. I thought that was a really dope move. And then also Aang running up that wall and then just rushing down with like that big, finale move that he was doing to break the drill. I thought that was a really cool moment. But also just the fight scene between Azula and Aang are pretty good. But again, like I was saying before, with some of these fight scenes, they feel very, they're not as dynamic as they could be. I feel like it's very just shoot one person doing their moves and then shoot the other person doing their moves, rather than having a mix of like, two shots or having over the shoulders or having, using high and low angles, which is something we're going to talk about later, does happen in the Legend of Korra fight scenes, which is why I think those fight scenes are so much more effective as fight scenes, rather than here that feels a little bit more basic and safe. All right, next up, we've got Azula and Zuko, the first fight that they have in Book 2. I'm gonna also put this one in A tier as well. From the top of my head, the things I can remember that were huge for this one, of course, is seeing Zuko bring out his daggers again, Azula being effective even without firebending, like she's beating Zuko's firebending without any firebending at all, and then her doing lightning bending, and then seeing for the first time Iroh using lightning redirection, even though at the time of first viewing, none of us realized what he was doing until later when we got the episode of Bitterwork, when we realized that was an actual ability. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that this is going to be an A tier fight. I'm going to keep it right there. We have Jet and the Freedom Fighters and Aang the gang versus the Dai Li. This one, from my memory, is just kind of a mid-tier fight, and the reason I say that is because I don't remember a lot of like dynamic action for it, except for Jet actually saving Toph's butt, which some people don't recognize, is that Toph is not like completely infallible. The Dai Li have put her down before, or were on the edge of putting her down, and it was Jet that saved her, and he wasn't there. She would have got taken down. That's all I can really think of. And I mean, the big moment, of course, of Jet's death going on, that's huge too, but that's more huge from a narrative perspective, not so much for me like the fight itself. Like, I really can't remember too many moves from this fight scene. All right, next up we have Toph and Aang, and a little bit of Katara too in there, and a little bit of Sokka, versus the Earth Kingdom soldiers, the Earth Kingdom guards who were at the temple, or at the palace I should say. This one's definitely an A tier fight, and the reason I say that is because it's got a huge spectacle to it. It's like almost like a siege against the palace, and I thought that was a really interesting thing to watch. Some really big moves, like when the Earth soldiers were throwing those huge statues, and Aang and Toph were there to, like, block it with the ground. And all of the Toph and Aang stuff I think was really cool. They were working really well together. I think some of the animation for that was really well done, and the lighting and the music I think was really good for this scene too. So yeah, A tier for that one there. All right, and next up we have essentially the first fight of book 2, and that is when Aang went Avatar State against those Earth Kingdom soldiers. Again, I'm gonna call this kind of a mid-tier fight, though it is awesome to see Aang going to the Avatar State. There's a difference between being a good scene and being a good fight scene, and what I'm judging these based on is really the fight scenes. And for this, there wasn't a lot of dope moments for me to be like, yeah, this is like totally awesome, I gotta watch this again. It's not a fight that I revisit all that much. The only reason I would revisit this scene is because of the narrative drive behind it. So I'm gonna put this one in B tier for sure. The next up we have Hugh versus the gang, and I'm gonna put this one in the A tier, really mostly on the back of Hugh and his ability to swamp bin an entire monster to fight off the gang, and in doing so, and him being a different opponent, because usually they only fight other humans, whether they're non-benders or benders. You see a lot of different movements from the likes of like Katara using those like scissor waves or whatever she was using to break up the monster that was Hugh, and then some other things in there too that were really cool. So I definitely put this one higher on my list in terms of the book 2 fights. And then we have the rough Rhinos versus the gang, and this is after the Avatar day where Aang was pretending to be Kyoshi, and then Kyoshi actually manifested and told them, hey, you need to calm your stuff down. This is the legit Avatar, and you need to respect him. So I'm gonna put this one in C. I think this is one of those fights that are forgettable to me personally. I'm not gonna say it's like the lowest tier of the fight scenes in book 2, although it might go down, like depending on some of these things I'm seeing, because right now some of the fight scenes I'm seeing that are coming up, I think this might actually go down to D. But really it's just a case of I don't think about this fight scene very often. I don't really think about the rough Rhino fight scenes in general all that much, if I'm being really honest. All right, next up we've got the Serpent versus the gang, and I'm also going to put this one in A tier. Very similar to what I had for the Hugh fight, is that it's just a different fight because it's a monster that we're fighting. It's a big creature. It's not a human, not a bender or non-bender. And similar to the fact that it's a bigger monster, we're seeing different kinds of bending. Like we see like the biggest wave we've ever seen Katara kind of manifest to fight against it, and having Aang fighting alongside her I think is really cool, and seeing the whole team kind of band together to make it happen. Even Toph at the beginning got them on that platform because she bent them to be able to be there, and then also the beginning where Katara and Aang were getting him to do like a parting of the Red Seas kind of a thing. I think it was really cool. So yeah, the Serpent versus the gang, A tier for me. So then we have Team Azula versus Team Avatar. And while this one is pretty awesome, I have a feeling that it might be mid-tier for me. And I think this is cool again from a narrative perspective, or from just the idea of new information revealed that people can chi block, and that Ty Lee is so effective, or even oh, you know what? No, there are some pretty cool shots in here that I'm actually remembering. I'm gonna put this one in A tier, but this one's gonna be kind of like low A tier, not like high A tier. And the reason I say this is because there is some really cool shots, like with May attacking Katara and then the daggers coming up into the wood. I really like that a lot. And of course, like I was saying before, the Ty Lee stuff was cool. The thing about, I don't really think the Azula and Aang fight was all that amazing to me. Going down the chutes, I mean, I guess it's visually cool a little bit, but it's kind of simplistic in the way that it went out. So yeah, I'm gonna put it A tier, below A tier. Next up, we have Zuko and Iroh versus the Rough Rhinos. So this was the first time that we saw the Rough Rhinos. I'm gonna put this one as a mid-tier fight, because again, I don't really remember too many amazing things happening in this fight. I mean, it's always cool seeing Iroh and Zuko fight, like, next to each other, but in terms of it being like something I think about a lot, no, it's kind of like mid-tier to me. It's like any fight with the Rough Rhinos, I feel like have to go down, because I don't really care too much about them in terms of a fight scene scenario. All right, and then we have Azula and the Kyoshi warriors. Now this one, I kind of almost want to say is legendary, but really not a lot happens in it. And I think, again, like I was saying before, the shots are very simplistic. The beats and the dynamic of the fight seems really simplistic. And really the only thing I can remember is this one shot where Azula, flips over and disarms Suki. Now that's the only reason I had that so high. And if that is my reasoning, then I gotta say it's probably going to be really A tier, not S tier, because really just on on the back of just one shot rather than it being the entire fight. So, you know, A tier for this one. And then we have Toph versus the Earth Rumble people. And this one you got to put in S tier because it's our first time seeing Toph fight properly. Like, yes, we did see her fight during the Earth Rumble when she was just fighting the Boulder, but we get to see her like at full force here and to see like, you know, how concise she is as a fighter, because she has to wait and listen. And that was what Aang was told to look for at a master, an earthbending master. Wait for someone who waits and listen, and she has to because she's blind. She has seismic sense, and the only way she can fight back is by waiting for someone else to attack her or to make the first movement so that she knows how to react to it. And we see that in full force here. We see how she does the dust cloud to disable everybody else but enable her because she can see with the dust cloud around her. And then seeing all the fight moves too, and some of the dynamic animations. Like I remember in particular the main guy that she was fighting, I forget the guy's name, the guy with the long hair who basically runs the Earth Rumble, has some really cool fights and flips, and in the animation there you could tell that they actually based it on some sort of footage of a real martial artist doing it. So that one I definitely liked a lot. I think it definitely deserves to be S tier. The next up we have Toph versus the Boulder, which I'm going to put as an A tier fight. The reason I put that A tier and not S tier is that I don't think it's as legendary for me. It's a very good fight and a very solid fight. I think this one actually would probably go, matter of fact, let me start doing this right now. I think this will go at the top of A tier. If I'm being completely honest, but it's just not, you know, legendary to me where I'm like always like, oh, I'm so jazzed about that fight. It's more of an introduction fight, and I think it's a very solid introduction fight and a really good one, but I don't think it's like pushing to like, you know, the highest of heights, especially when we have another fight from Toph in the same arena that is much better, to me at least. And then we have Zuko versus the Earth Kingdom bandits, and I'm gonna put this one in S tier for two reasons. Narrative reasons, because this whole episode was amazing, and seeing Zuko basically being like this, you know, old western, not deserter, but like a wanderer who comes in and like saves the town. But also the fight scene itself is really short. It's not a huge fight scene. It's not a lot is going on, but the shot selection and the things that Zuko was doing before he even engaged with earthbending, or with firebending rather, I think is some of my favorite in this entire book. Not more so than I think that maybe like the last fight, or even maybe might actually, you know, in terms of like putting, I'm starting ranking things now because we're starting to get to that point where I'm starting ranking things. Not to the point where I would put it over that last fight between Zuko and Aang and Katara and Azula, but to the fact that I think I might enjoy it more than the Toph fight in the Earth Rumble arena. It's just so, the shots are so sweet. It feels like an old western, and I think that it's really well done. And then last we have Jet versus Zuko. This one's definitely going to be A tier. I think this one's a really, really cool fight, especially that there's a lot of environmental advantage that's used in it, especially when they're in the cafe or the tea shop at first. And then when it moves out into the later parts, we see a lot of cool movements too. Like even the sword fight itself, like there's one point where Zuko like sticks his sword to trap jets. And I thought that was a really interesting move and something that I will have liked to see more of just in terms of fights in this series. But the whole idea that, you know, we're trying to press Zuko to reveal his firebending, and seeing how well Zuko does with, you know, no firebending whatsoever. Like he was not like he did not give in to what Jet was trying to do. I thought was really cool. Now let's try and see how we're going to order these things and talk about them a little bit more in depth where possible. Now seeing it now, I definitely think that the Rough Rhino fights are probably the lowest tier in terms of all of these fights in general. This Avatar one too, I think this one might have to go to C tier because again, I would more highly rank these guys, the chase fight and the Dai Li fight, than this one, which was more, the amazingness of it was really because of the Avatar state and you know, Aang not being able to control it, but not really the fight itself. I think the fight itself is actually very whatever to me. Now in terms of, I think the A tier is a little bit too loaded, so I'm gonna start moving things down a little bit. I think this one deserves to stay. I like the idea of Suki and the Azula fight, but really, like I said before, it's really just that one shot that does it for me. Although I would say Azula and Aang's fight I think will go above that. I think this one can stay where it's at. This can stay where it's at. Although I think I might push this one a little higher because of like the siege that was going on in that fight. I think the big siege brings that up a few levels. I actually might push this one down, even though I like these shots a lot. I think this one can go high B tier here. The fight between Team Azula and Team Aang. when they were in Omashu. The Hugh fight and the Serpent fight, I think those both should stay up here. I think those are kind of like the basis of how far they're gonna go. But I do really like the Jet. I like this fight more than I like the Azula and Zuko fight. Oh, but I think it's still too loaded. Do I think these should go down? Hold on, let me see how this looks to me. Should these go here maybe? That does look a little bit better. But this feels weird. Like the C and the D tier feels weird to me. But this feels kind of appropriate to me if I'm not mistaken. I think this is a pretty good setup. This is almost, and I like this being here because I would put it in B tier, like high B tier, because I feel like the fight itself, again, not the most interesting stuff going on in terms of like shot selection, but because of the whole lighting redirection and lightning coming about, I think I'm fine with doing it here. So yeah, I think this is my list. I think I like this how it is right now. I like my legendary setup, or I like my S tier setup. The A tier is a little bit too loaded, but I'm okay with it being loaded like that. B tier is all right. I agree with my C tier and my D tiers. Those are the fights that I kind of care about least in this book. But that's it. I want to know about you guys. Let me know in the comments below which fight scenes that are your favorite from book 2 and how you would do a ranking of these videos. And if you want to watch more of my videos here, you can look here right at the side of my face. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace, love, and remember, be water, my friends.